one of the most powerful things we have as human beings is our ability to tell our stories. And if I don't have the words to tell my story, then somebody else is going to tell it for me. My students and their families, on one hand, they have traveled some very hard roads to get to the United States, coming from refugee camps, coming as migrants, coming for a lot of different reasons. So on one hand, they've reached a milestone in their personal journeys. But the reality is that the people who make the rules, make the services, make the tests, all these different factors that impact their lives are written and created by people who speak English. So if my students aren't able to tell their own story to the people who own the system, they also don't have the power to change the system to work for them or to even navigate it.
Language is a powerful tool, and it's really easy to judge people on how they speak your language. Of course, knowledge transcends language. One need not speak English to prove intelligence. But what does that mean for English language learners, ELL students in the United States? I'm Nathaniel Bozarth, and this is Wide Ruled, Brain Roots podcast on the past and present of equality in education. Before we begin, a reminder that we'd love for you to support Wide Ruled by becoming a patron on Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/Wide Ruled podcast or click on the link in the show notes. And before we talk about ELL, I want you to hear the story of today's guest. She's Diane Mora, ELL teacher at East High School in Kansas City, Missouri.
Unimaginable, probably. Maybe it happened more than I know about, but so the year would have been 1977. I graduated high school in 81, but in middle school, which would have been 9th grade, I remembered being called to my counselor's office for the results of what they called an aptitude test. I would have been maybe 14 years old, and everybody had to take these aptitude tests, and they were, I guess, supposed to show what kinds of jobs you would maybe be suited for or something. I got called to my counselor's office for my results, and this was back in the day when teachers could still smoke in the building. I do remember his little mustache and him sitting back in his chair and smoking and telling me that my aptitude test indicated I would not be college material, and that my aptitude showed that I would only be suited for jobs requiring repetitive motion, which would be factory work, really. He said that I would not be advised to take classes that would make me college ready, but that I would be on more like a workforce ready track.
If you're a regular Wide Ruled listener, you may already know that this sort of issue is one of the things about which I blow the whistle the most. I blow the whistle on modern day movements toward vocational school for this very reason. Historically, when there is an available course of study designed to prepare students particularly for the workforce or trade school, minority and low-income students are disproportionately steered to those programs. Today, education reformers are quick to suggest vocational programs as an alternative to college for their students, citing the massive amounts of debt that millennials have accrued and acting like it's a first-time, cutting-edge solution. And yeah, I agree there's a problem with exorbitant college prices, but I also don't plan to stop cautioning educators, parents, and children on basis of our shared discriminatory history. When we have applied the solution in the past, it just has not been applied evenly across socioeconomic status and race. and I want equality.
Like at the time, I don't know why I remember having that conversation so vividly, other than, I mean, neither of my parents went to college, and I don't know, back then, I don't even know that it was really expected the way it is now. College was still mostly a guy thing. You know, boys went to college. Girls only went to college if they wanted to be doctors or lawyers or something like that. And that never entered my mind, certainly. So I don't know that I thought too much about it, other than it sort of was like he sealed my fate, or I believed it. Mm-hmm. From that point, I did go on to high school, but I was placed in what they called COE, Classroom Occupational Education. Instead of taking algebra, I went to accounting class. Instead of taking, I don't know what, I was taking a typing class. So I would take those courses in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I had a retail job at first at just like a local store. And so I would do that in the afternoon.
Wow.
And that would count toward my credits at school.
Diane graduated high school early because, after completing the first semester of her senior year, she had enough credits and had no incentive to continue. After all, she was already working a job and making money on a daily basis, so why put off going full-time any longer? Eventually, Diane moved on from the retail shop she was working to take a job at a bank, working overnight to encode checks. This is before this was done by machine. She did her job well and was promoted to be a teller. There, she learned that nearly everyone around her held a college degree. When they found that she hadn't gone to college, they often seemed to scoff at the fact that she hadn't.
One day, one of the people working at the bank, when they found out that I didn't have a college degree, asked me, they were dumbfounded, and they said, "Why, are you stupid or something?"
She was eventually auditing dozens of teller accounts. And because she did, as her high school counselor had doomed her to, and she did it over and over in so-called repetitive motion, she eventually found a shortcut she deemed could save the bank $10,000 a year by improving their audit process. Finally, her superiors recognized she was in fact very intelligent, and someone asked whether she had considered going to college. And so she did. A first-generation college student, she sort of stumbled through at first, but now she holds 1 bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees, plus postgraduate study. And after a few other intervening occupations, Diane became a school teacher. For a time, she trained ESL teachers, but later decided she wanted to be in the classroom so she could really practice what she was preaching. I asked her about what she went through and how that relates to her practice of education today. I understand that tracking is different now, because it sounds to me like you were definitely talking about a practice that is, at least in theory, not something we implement anymore, but you're raising your eyebrow.
Yeah, I am raising my eyebrow because I think, in theory, most educators want to believe that we don't rely on numerical data to make decisions about students. And the reason I say that that's what we want to believe is because we would eliminate it if we really believed it. It wasn't necessary, right? But every year, a new test comes out that's supposedly better and greater and faster at determining either what a student is capable of doing or has done, or some kind of a measurement that is reduced down to a number.
So why is that harmful? Why isn't that strictly okay? In the case of Diane's students, reducing their abilities down to a number has especially heinous results.
So, regardless of when you are dropped into U.S. public education, if your language is something other than English and you've never lived in the U.S. before, let's say, I don't know, maybe you drop into any school in the U.S. at 9th grade. You have 4 years to become as proficient academically and language-wise as any other 12th grader in the U.S. who was born here and whose native English or native language is English, right? Mm-hmm. Because all the tests, all the standardized tests, they're not going to ask you to show your knowledge in your first language. They're going to ask you to show your knowledge in English. Mm-hmm. If you're literate in your first language, the research says that you will learn social English in about 2 years. So be polite, get around, go to the lunchroom. Mm-hmm. But that it takes you about 5 years to learn academic English. If you're not literate in your first language, it would take you about 7, maybe even as many as 10 years to learn enough academic English to be on grade level. So that means if you enter in 9th grade, statistically speaking, it would be very rare that you're even at the same language proficiency as your native English-speaking peers by grade level. But yet these kids are expected to still graduate on time and then go where? Because this is what they can write.
That rustling sound was Diane holding up a sheet of paper. That was the result of 2 months of growth and preparation on behalf of one of her ELL students. The paper had 3 paragraphs. Short, simple paragraphs. It was about the students' favorite songs. Why they were their favorite songs, and an explanation of someone who didn't like those songs. Diane was really happy for the improvement her students had made, but on the grand scheme of things, being able to write a paper like that wasn't going to help them write a cover letter for a job application just yet.
Even if you want to go to a junior college, they're going to give you the COMPASS test, which is a language proficiency test, or the TOEFL. You're going to have to show how much English you can read and write academically before you can even get into a university.
And it feels like the other option is like go work at McDonald's or something. Like,
if you're lucky, your family may own like an ethnic restaurant or grocery store or something that's serving the culture within the community. If you're not so lucky, yeah, I mean,
well, it was funny. I mean, even when you were mentioning those statistics about how long it takes to acquire English, it's funny how, like, and I feel like I'll need to figure out a way to get this across in the podcast episode too. Like, I think somehow we who are not educators like myself, like, separate ELL from language acquisition in general. Like, somehow ELL is different. Somehow, if someone's moved to the United States, they have some sort of, like, they should have theoretically taken some sort of language acquisition pill, and, like, they're going to be able to do it fast and it's going to be easy.
I used to ask people 2 things when they would have that light bulb moment that you're kind of having. And first was, how much of your perception of someone is based on their ability to speak English well?
Oh, a ton.
I can think of a lot of times I've done that thing where I'm talking with someone who has broken English, and I simplify the way I talk, sort of dumbing it down. And I can even think of several times where that person I was talking with was a highly skilled technician or a PhD. It's like my unconscious brain was telling my mouth, they don't sound like me. They must not be as intelligent. But that's clearly not the case.
The other thing that I used to use as a tool for helping people understand the situation that my students are in is, I'll play this game with you. Would you please tell me your name, where you were born, and what you are going to, and your favorite flavor of ice cream without using any words containing the letter R. So let me repeat that. Your name, where you were born, your favorite flavor of ice cream without using any letter or words containing the letter R.
My name is Nathaniel. I can't say my last name. I don't know how to say the next thing.
But it's a simple question. I just want to know where you were born, when you were born.
When?
When?
1990. So I don't have to say it in a whole sentence?
Well, 1990 was a big year. That's 365 days.
I can't do it. I can't say that either. Okay.
You get the point.
Yes.
So your mind was trying to dissect every word to think about where the letter R fell.
Uh-huh.
It prohibited you from telling me your name.
Uh-huh.
So maybe I have to change your name because it just isn't going to work for our culture and our language because we don't use R sound in the letter R. Okay. So I'm just, kind of helping you understand. And it took you an awfully long time to say anything. You had to spend a lot of time thinking before you could say something. And I asked you questions about a subject that you know intimately. You know about you better than anybody else in the world. But because I put a restriction on the way you could use language, you suddenly struggled with how to tell me what you know. That is the reality of the kids who sit in my classroom. It's not that they don't know things. They don't have the language to tell me in a language that is the only language I understand. Primarily, we solve problems using the resources that we have. And that forces us to each be uniquely creative in how we reach the same result. Why would I take that away from you by forcing you to only find solutions, meaning give answers, that you have to choose a best answer? Because maybe you actually have a better idea. But if I don't give you the room outside of an assessment test to show me how your idea could be different, then I'm never going to know that.
Let's bring this all together. Growing up, Diane was told her options in life would be limited because of a test she took. As an adult, she sees how her experience is heuristic for understanding her student situation, where tests are a very limited method of collecting information about how they've improved and grown in school. Diane didn't have any solutions off the top of her head, because even if tests were simply translated into different languages, they'd still test cultural competency as much as literacy. Here's an example.
If you had a student who wrote to you, you asked them to write a personal narrative, and in their personal narrative, they wrote about building fires out in the desert, and they wrote about wolves attacking them, and they wrote maybe about riding bareback on camels, or they wrote about monsoons or whatever. Would you think that they were writing a personal narrative or fiction?
I guess fiction.
Right, because your worldview is from the United States, and it's from a neighborhood, or maybe if you lived in Arizona or something, you might have some desert images going through your mind for your personal narrative. But right, for the most part, it's going to be very different. So I'm supposed to expect students who have a very different worldview or different experiences of the world to fit neatly into a box where they check off an answer that isn't even culturally relevant to what their world experience has been so far. So am I really testing their language proficiency Am I really testing their cognitive ability, or am I ultimately testing their cultural worldview?
I'm Nathaniel Bozarth, and this has been Wide Ruled, Brain Roots podcast on the past and present of equality in education. In a moment, a snippet from our next episode. But first, if there was something in this episode that really sparked your imagination or challenged something you had previously thought, I'd love to hear about it. You can tweet me at @Bo_Nathaniel or comment on our Facebook page. That's Wide Ruled on Facebook. Please share this episode with at least one person who you think should hear it. And if you'd like to support us financially, visit patreon.com/Wide Ruled Podcast. There, you can donate as little as $1 per episode we churn out. Every bit helps. Thanks for listening. On the next episode of Wide Ruled.
So I was at church, and there were two little girls who came up to me, and they were asking me about how college was. So I told the two little girls that they should go to college too, because it's worth it. And so the first little girl said that she was definitely going to college, she was going to be a veterinarian, and she was super proud. But the second little girl said that that she wanted to be a veterinarian, but her mom told her to be a waitress instead because they make more money.